just met with the Vice President, Secretary Blinken, Secretary Austin, National Security Advisor Sullivan, and other members of the National Security Leadership Team in the Situation Room to discuss our ongoing efforts to evacuate American citizens, third country civilians.
Happy Saturday and welcome to The Deal. It is August 21st, 2021, and we're back here after vacation time. You know, in the summer, people take vacations, so and do all kind of things, try to visit folks normally, but we're still in the midst of COVID, so it's hard to do some of that. So most of the time that we took off was just to try to relax and recuperate. We're back to talk about a number of things this morning, or whatever time you pick us up. And as usual, I have our resident political science expert, the one Val Atkinson. Hey, Val.
Hello, Ed. Good morning to you.
Well, Val, coming into the show, folks saw the clip of the president and the vice president and the Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State. And we have to start with the Afghanistan story, not because I think it's the most important thing in American life right now. There's a lot of other stuff, but a lot of people have been making a lot of hay out of this Afghanistan thing, as if Afghanistan is the most important thing that's happened in American history. That this is somehow analogous to Vietnam and the evacuation of Saigon and so on and so forth. I've heard all kind of over the top stuff. But let me stop talking and ask you right away, what's your assessment of the U.S. pullout from Afghanistan and how it's going so far?
I'd like to start with something that President Biden said, that it was inevitable. We never intended to stay there forever. I think the question became then, when and how do you leave? And in the choices that he was presented with, none of them were good. Nothing was going to happen that was going to be all a bed of roses and no conflict. So he knew that going in. But what has happened is the media in all of its splendor, including my favorite media outlets that some may call progressive, jumped on this to all four. I've never seen anything like it. And there was nothing that the Biden administration could do or say that would kind of calm the waters and answer any of the questions. They saw this as an opportunity to make hay. They saw it as an opportunity to create headlines, to make news stories, to give old story legs, and they really was on it with all four. They hid behind something, Ed, that all of us recognize, that is the sorrow of families going without knowing where their loved ones are, women being pulled out of school and out of jobs, kids going without the needs that they have. They hid behind that, and that was supposed to be the reason for their aggressiveness toward the administration on this Afghanistan thing. That's not the case. They were doing it for media purposes and not because of their love of Afghans. There are some conservative folks on the right already who are complaining and have a plan to stop the influx of a lot of Afghan people from coming into the United States. Those people you pretend to love so much and feel so sorry for, you don't want them here. I guess you want them to go someplace else, maybe Iran or maybe India or someplace, I don't know. But at any rate, I think this is going to come out better than many think, because news cycles are just as we say they are cycles. And 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, this would not be garnering the headline space that it is right now. And we'll have something else to talk about. And when we do, it'll give the people with responsibility a chance to go in and fix things without somebody looking over their shoulder 100% of the time. I'll say this one last thing and leave me that. As an old ex-military man, I was really kind of ticked off at some of these reporters asking questions to Milley and Secretary Austin as though they were standing on the red carpet. Well, explain this or that to me. And why you didn't do this? And don't you think it would have been better to do X? And I'm thinking, here are the top military guys in the nation of the greatest military force ever to exist on planet Earth. And you have never been in the military yourself. And you are calling them to task. Well, explain your strategy to me. and why does your strategy have holes in it? And don't you think it would have been better if you would have done X instead of Y? And as a military man, as I said before, that was just a little too much for me. I didn't like that at all. Still don't. Volume.
I want to remind the folks that you're listening to Val Atkinson, and this is The Deal. I'm Ed Clark. And Val, one of the things that I want to, so we can close out this discussion because there's so much other stuff to talk about, but let's talk about some history real quick, some recent history, 2019 and 2020 history. There was a guy living at the White House named Donald Trump, and he had a summit with the Taliban. And to facilitate this summit, he had to release the now current leader of the Taliban from jail in Pakistan and brokered a deal to leave Afghanistan, for U.S. troops to leave Afghanistan. That was in 2020 when he was still president. That's Donald Trump. The deal that Joe Biden walks into the White House with is a signed deal to leave Afghanistan by this time. And so Joe Biden says, I'm honoring that deal. And would not there have been planning going on prior to Joe Biden coming into the White House? I'm just curious, how was Donald Trump, had he won the election, going to facilitate this? And would not the military had already been aware that the time limit was approaching?
He doesn't know. He's a fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy, always has been. He was going to work it out in real time. He didn't have any plans. And that's a great point that you bring up. Joe Biden did the best thing he could based on what his predecessor, the position his predecessor had placed us in. And he had not a whole lot of other choices but to do this. And people don't like to look back at history when it's not convenient for their argument or their position on a particular subject matter. But that is exactly what happened that led us to where we are now. So I think I'd like to see some of these pseudo soldiers that are posing as journalists kind of start being a little bit more pragmatic, a little bit more practical, and get off of this stuff of trying to create the news and just start reporting it.
Yeah, you know, my piece this week was I wrote it in Dari, the headline in Dari, which is the language of the folks in Afghanistan. Dari uses the same script as Arabic, but Dari is actually more similar to Persian, which they speak in Iran. And my whole point of doing that was to show how cynical Americans are. They want us to think that they actually care about Afghanistan and care about the Middle East. But you go to any of those people doing all the hand wringing and complaining, they would not be able to tell you anything about Afghanistan, its history, or anything else. One last point on that, Val, and I'll need for you to put on your history professor hat here and explain to people who the Taliban is and how they got to where they are in the first place. You know, they're not a very old, you know, thousands of years old. The Taliban comes out of a very specific point in time in the 20th century, doesn't it?
In the 20th century, they were established, or they started back in 1994. They were comprised of a group of people called the Mujahideen. And one of the people that was helping to fund them was Osama bin Laden. But the Mujahideen was a very conservative group of Islamists, and they adhere to Sharia law. And that's what they wanted. They wanted to impose their version of Sharia law of Islam, and they wanted everybody out of Afghanistan that didn't belong there. They welcomed the United States in back in the 80s, these factions that made up the Taliban later on. They welcomed the United States in because they were fighting the Afghanistans were fighting the Russians at that time. We provided them with Stinger missiles to shoot the helicopters down, and as mountainous as Afghanistan is, the helicopter is the only way to get around in that place because there's not roads. And if you don't have a helicopter force, you can't do anything militarily in Afghanistan. So we gave them the Stinger missiles to shoot down the helicopters. Eventually, the Russians had to leave. They were happy, we were happy, but they asked us then, well, when are you going to leave? And the US decided, well, I'm not sure if you guys can handle keeping insurgent groups, Al-Qaeda, ISIS type of groups out of your country. I need to stay here to make sure it's out. That's when we became enemies with the Taliban because they didn't want us there. It's not that they wanted to push Sharia law. They didn't want the foreign influence telling them how to run their country. And we didn't want to turn it over because we were afraid that Al-Qaeda and ISIS would come back and maybe get on some more planes and fly them into the World Trade Center. And so that's when it started. But at no time did we have a democratic country, and the people of Afghanistan voted to say that we want or don't want this type of government. That didn't happen. Never did.
Well, I guess that doesn't matter, though, does it? Because it's what Americans think is the problem here. How do we? I know you said earlier that the news cycle is probably going to take care of a lot of this, right? People are just going to forget and move on to something else. What do you think is the short-term damage then to Joe Biden and the Democrats' need to govern here in America by having to deal with this particular story? Is there a short-term thing on the Biden presidency with this?
Yeah, well, I would say on the Biden administration, because the media right now are honed in and they are trying to find a individual scapegoat. And I thought it was Lloyd Austin, and it still may be, but the focus has switched just a little bit, and it is focused now on the Secretary of State, more so than on the Secretary of Defense. And so I'm watching that very closely to see where all the thunder clouds gather and how it comes to be the point of the spear, as it were, and who is it aimed at. But I think there are factions in the media that want their pound of flesh from this administration, and they're not going to be satisfied until they get it. Now, whether it's going to be at the secretary level or undersecretary or at the intelligence agency level, we don't know. But I think that's where the attention is right now. They want a scapegoat to be identified. Then they can go on and say, okay, that problem's been solved. We can go on to something else.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, this is a good time to take a break, Val. And when we come back, we're going to come back over to the United States and deal with some stuff here domestically. Domestic white terrorism is what I'm calling it. And it's what it actually is what it is. Not just what I'm calling it, is what it is. So stay right there. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about domestic white terrorism.
Vaccines are extremely important for performing. It is so important for everyone on campus to get the vaccine, to be fully vaccinated.
Art can't exist in a bubble, and when it's just you and the production team, it's still missing one of the main characters that it needs, which is an audience.
You have a spot. Take your shot.
Everyone from teens to seniors can get a COVID-19 vaccine. Visit myspot.nc.gov.
A video live streamed on Facebook showed the suspect, identified as Floyd Ray Roseberry from North Carolina, making remarks about President Joe Biden from inside a truck.
If you blow my truck up, man, hey, it's on you, Joe. I'm ready to die for the cause. The revolution's on. I cannot set this bomb off. The only thing that can set this bomb off is enough decimals.
And welcome back to The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That was Val's cousin, Floyd Ray Roseberry. Now, Val, help me out here, folks. That was Floyd Ray Roseberry from Grover, North Carolina, who decided to drive his truck up to D.C. and park outside of the Library of Congress and near the Capitol, threatening to blow it up with a bomb that was not a bomb, that happened to be some bomb-making material. Val, I'm just not. Let's just go ahead and talk about this. The chief of the Capitol Police, I thought, started making some excuses for Mr. Roseberry. He said he talked to his family, he had lost his mother, some other things were going on. But all the sentiments that Mr. Roseberry had were the ones that we've been hearing for months now, that they want to kill Joe Biden, right? They want to overturn the government. Donald Trump's still the president. All those same tropes that the right have been spouting off for the last at least a year. And it's dangerous. And just a week before, Department of Homeland Security had issued another report saying these type of people are dangerous. Talk to me about this Floyd Ray Roseberry.
Floyd Ray Roseberry is emblematic in my mind of a lot of right-wing people who have been really suppressed for years. But buoyed when Donald Trump was elected in 2016 and allowed to come to the fore and act out all of their silliness and stupidity. And that's exactly what we have now. We have people that have been feeling this way, Ed, for decades, for almost the entirety of their lives, but have been suppressed because there was no way, no avenue to express their idiocy. And now when Donald Trump came along and Fox News took another step up, now it becomes okay. It becomes all right to do and say these things. And we've been seeing them come out in abundance. If we go back 3, 4, 5 decades, you never would have imagined a white male from Grover, North Carolina, driving his truck up to the Library of Congress. And if you've ever been there, if you look at the Library of Congress, your back is facing the Capitol building. It's right, the street is that he was parked on runs right between the Capitol building and the Library of Congress. Nobody would have ever thought of doing that. But the whole tenor of political parlance has changed. And now it appears to be okay to do anything and say anything that you desire. And I think we've reached, or just about have reached, Ed, a tipping point when we need to stop talking about these right-wing terrorists that are domestic, and we need to do more about it.
Yeah.
We need to turn the clock back to 1861, 1862. There was a guy in the White House named Abraham Lincoln. He knew what to do about it. He threatened to jail the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. He never did, but he threatened to have global martial law. And I don't think we need that. But I'm saying we have got to get a handle on what's going on here. We have, if I could use one more analogy, and that's the movie, The Matrix. when they had the sentinels breaching the hull of the ship, the mothership, and to destroy, what's his name, Fishburne, and his crew. When the sentinels breach the hull, it's going to be all over, okay? And that's what has happened here with the ultra right-wing people. These are sentinels. These are the Mr. Smiths, and they're everywhere. Their job is to destroy democracy in America as we know it. They're inside already.
Hell, they're in Congress. They're in Congress. They're like Mo Brooks and those people in Congress who came out right after Mr. Roseberry's arrested and said, well, you know, he's not a bad guy. He has some grievances. Again, people in Congress, sitting in Congress, the Marjorie Taylor Greene and all these idiots that are on the right now that are propping this stuff up. You know, the other thing I wanted to talk about, Val, is the My Pillow guy. And I know he got embarrassed with his supposed, you know, evidence of fraud or whatever. Even people who showed up for his little conference that he did said, hey, dude, you know, there's nothing here. You know, I mean, real IT people said what you're talking about doesn't make any sense. There's no way you can do those kind of things. Nevertheless, there are people who still support the My Pillow guy. He has a forum on OAN and other outlets. He goes on podcasts on the right, and he still says this stuff about Donald Trump was supposed to be reinstalled as president. I don't know if you know this, last weekend. So he actually is the president now. The Supreme Court was going to go 9-0, saying that Donald Trump was actually president. And the My Pillow guy said that. In addition to that, I saw a story out of California, Val, where this man killed his children. He was a QAnon person, killed his children because he had been listening to that stuff. And some of these people are just nuts, bananas, need mental health treatment. But nevertheless, they're still doing this stuff and they're in danger because we saw that. They invaded the Capitol, Val. We saw it. It's on tape. Now, let's get the brass tacks. I started looking at the census data. And the census data always never shows how many brown and black people there really are. But this one happened to show that white folks are less and less. And if I know what I think I know, it probably means they're even less than what those numbers show because all the brown people didn't report themselves. The census was jacked up this time because the way Donald Trump tried to mess it up. And a lot of people didn't report. So there probably are more black and brown people and Asian people than we think. What does that mean for white people? How does this play into this Floyd Ray Roseberry and the My Pillow guy and Marjorie Taylor Greene and all this, the diminishing number of white folks?
That is the essence, Ed, of the motivation and the reasoning for all of this stupidity that you see going on now. Donald Trump really didn't start it. As Obama says all of the time, Donald Trump is not the cause, he is the symptom. Donald Trump saw what was going on in America and positioned himself to take advantage of it and get elected as the president of the United States. And that was the cause, is that people see themselves losing control of their country, as it were. The demographics show it. There are demographers that say 2042 is the magical year, that whites become the minority and they will never, ever again gain the majority. So what these groups started doing is figure out a way, well, if we're gonna be the minority, how can we rule in a democracy as the minority? We need things like the filibuster, right? Where the minority really rules. We need to have voter suppression. We need to have voter nullification. We need to have gerrymandering. And most of all, we need Citizens United so that we can get all of this money to control the media, right? We need to do all these things. And guess what? They haven't. Tick them off one by one. They've done all of these things. They gutted the 1965 Voting Rights Act. They come up with Citizens United. They've done something in the law case called Rucco v. Common Cause and Chiavallo versus State of Washington that really permit them to do any kind of gerrymandering they want to do. They've gotten all of the pieces in place on the chessboard. And now they're waiting for that one move. They're going to yell checkmate because they are the minority. They're looking at South Africa, where South Africa, not only the whites had always been a minority, they had to give the government over to blacks, but they still run it. So how did they do that? So I think that's what these people are looking at, Ed, is all of the signs say that they are going to be in a minority. An African-American was even elected president for 2 terms. It is not looking good. So what do we do to take control of the United States of America, regardless of our numbers and representation?
Yeah. So Val, what does that mean then in real terms? Then we know that the George Floyd Justice Act, we know that the John Lewis voting bill and some other stuff are percolating. Somehow they were able to get the infrastructure bill through the Senate. Didn't even have to worry about a filibuster. Got enough of Republicans to go along with it in the Senate, and it may have problems in the House. But how do you get some of this other stuff done, knowing that the Republicans are banking on keeping their disaffected white folks in line, keeping them mad enough about everything? I can give you a deal on infrastructure, but I'll never give you a deal on voting or give you a deal on racial justice, because then I'll probably lose those disaffected white people. Isn't that the calculus that they've made, that they can talk out of both sides of their neck? They know they got to do infrastructure because the roads are collapsing, but they can still play this. I'm not giving you anything on voting or on justice.
I've always thought from the beginning, Ed, that this whole infrastructure thing was a smart move by the Republicans to really cut the Democrats off at the pass. They knew what Pelosi's strategy was going in, that she was going to be the gatekeeper and say that, okay, we ain't passing nothing until you guys in the Senate pass our big infrastructure bill, the one that's worth trillions of dollars, not the one you sent over with a lot of Republican support. If that's going to be that, she thought that was going to be her strategy. Well, she wasn't counting on some of her own moderate Democrats jumping up and saying, well, I don't know if I agree with that right now. And now the Republicans are sitting back with that smug look on their face saying, well, the ball's in your court now, Nancy. What are you going to do? It's up to you. Knowing that there is a very small margin in the House right now, that if you get all of these moderate Democrats not going along with her, she doesn't have the strategic power that she thinks she has. And the Republicans in the end can say, well, this whole infrastructure bill didn't pass, but we did our part in the Senate. Look at all the Republicans that came across, and we voted for this because we knew we needed these roads and bridges repaired and that sort of thing. It was the Democrats over in the House who decided not to pass it because they wanted something called human infrastructure, which I don't agree with at this time.
So you're telling me that we got played again?
Yeah, absolutely.
that the Democrats were played again.
Again?
But we got a minute or two left in this segment. So here's the grand question then. What do you do? What does Nancy Pelosi do? How do you whip people in line to support something so you don't come across looking like a complete jackass in this, or is it too late? Or is it going to be too much infighting? The infrastructure bill fails, and then you still don't get anything on voting and criminal justice reform.
Well, the weapon that she has is one that the Republicans use all the time. The fear of the average Republican office holder is that they would get primaried. And that's one thing that these moderate Democrats can be made aware of, that, okay, you can let the Republicans use you to throw a monkey wrench into the operations here, but we don't have to nominate you. And you, because you're in the House, all of you have to run for reelection in 2022. But first thing you got to do is get the nomination of the party, and you don't have that yet. That's her biggest weapon right now. And you don't want to use that, because now you're inviting a split in the party when unity is what you need at this particular time more than anything else. She's in a strait. She's in a dire strait right now. She's got to hope these Democrats come around without her having to pull out the primary card, because if they don't, she's in trouble.
Yeah, 2022 midterms are going to be interesting. Look, Floyd Ray Roseberry, we started out the segment on, like I said, he is a white domestic terrorist. I don't care if he had a real bomb or not. He threatened to blow people up. He went on Facebook Live. He was able to walk out of that truck where I don't think a black man would have been able to walk out, because we still haven't dealt with these white domestic terrorists, and they need to be dealt with whenever they're caught. They need to be given the max and put away. They're dangerous. And on top of that, we got the MyPillow guy and all these other nut jobs that we got to deal with. Anyway, hey, look, it's time to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about COVID-19, the Delta variant, people not wanting to get masked, blah, 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 blah. Please stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Yeah, because I have a granddaughter who's a year old, and she has Down syndrome, and she's had heart surgery, and I wanted to protect her. I wanted to protect her and myself. So, and my godmother, she had been on me to get my shot, and I finally decided it was time, and to stop putting it off and come and get it done. And I'm glad I did. Come on, it's not bad. I got the Johnson & Johnson one shot, and it was easy. It was easy. It was nothing to it.
Initial boosters in the US will focus on healthcare workers, nursing home residents, and older people, groups who were among the first to receive the shot when it first became available in December.
Earlier today, our medical experts announced a plan for booster shots to every fully vaccinated American, adult American.
And welcome back to our final segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We've been talking about Afghanistan. We've been talking about crazy white folks in pickup trucks from North Carolina driving to D.C., all kinds of stuff, Nancy Pelosi and her problems. Val, very sobering segment, this segment. On the way back in, you saw some footage of people getting COVID-19 vaccines. We're 8-9 months into this vaccine thing, Val, and there's still not enough people with it. As soon as I had a chance, I was getting my vaccine. Now, the argument by some people is I wanted to wait and see what the outcome was going to be, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of those people are in the hospital dying. And then we've seen story after story on CNN, on everywhere else, where people in the hospital bed saying, please, God, go ahead and get vaccinated. And then they die and they leave wife and children, or husband and children, or husband and wife die. We've seen stories of parents and children die. And now we're talking about children. I'm talking about 11, 12, 9-year-olds in intensive care in Mississippi, in Alabama, dying. And then you still have people like Governor DeSantis in Florida, who is trying to withhold pay for teachers and administrators in Florida if they mandate masks. What is that about? What does DeSantis have to gain from this? I have a theory, but you tell me what you think DeSantis is trying to do.
I think it's all about reelection. I think it's all about him trying to get on the side of those people that are going to cast votes in the Republican primary for governor and position himself in a position that if he wants to run for higher office, that's the president or the vice presidency, he will not have alienated those people that he's going to need in the primary. That's what this is all about. He's willing to give up the lives of Floridians, their children, and loved ones, all for his political career. That's what it's about. It's no more and no less than that.
Well, I thought he was an Ivy League graduate. Don't you think he's smarter than that to know that he needs people to vote for him? If they're dead, who the hell's going to vote for him? How the hell does that work? If your constituents have lost a loved one to COVID, aren't they going to be blaming him for, or have they figured out a magic way to blame Joe Biden for this too?
But yet, one of the things you have to understand is when you're looking at those kind of people, logic don't work. Reasoning takes a backseat. There's no nexus that makes 1 and 1 equal 2. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. They only think in a small vacuum. They think me, Republicans, election, and there is nothing else that really matters. And because if they thought logically, and if they use reason to get to the nexus, they wouldn't be doing this. You're right. They would not be doing this. So obviously they are not thinking that way. It is something that I think we suffer from nationally is the reason that DeSantis is getting away with this. We have a overblown attitude about ourselves as Americans, Ed, that the only thing that matters is our individual liberties and freedoms, our individual choices. That comes first and foremost. There are a lot of other cultures, national cultures in the world that think that they have an obligation to their communities and to their country before themselves. And they make different decisions. They say, well, if we got to wear a mask, that's good for the community. It's good for the state. It's good for the country. I'll do my part. Am I doing my part? Americans think, well, what are the choices? Well, how can we barter and trade this? If I wear the mask like you want me to, can I get this? Or do I have to wear it all 7 days? You know, they want to bargain. They want to. That's a part of our culture. Yeah. That's what we're used to. We're used to it's me. And then second choice, it may be we. But the first choice is me. Yeah. And it's costing us this pandemic. If it wasn't developed in Wuhan or someplace like that, if some intelligence agents could have done this, this is the perfect storm to really hit places like the United States of America harder than any place else because of our national culture and the way we deal with things individually, and we don't think us enough.
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right. You know, the upshot of this, Val, is that people like Governor Abbott of Texas, who's another one of the wacky mask dudes, he ended up getting COVID himself. He went to an event where a whole bunch of people didn't have masks on. He's already been vaccinated, though. See, this is the other part of the story, Val. DeSantis is vaccinated. Abbott is vaccinated. All these Republicans are vaccinated who are telling people to act foolish. And they're now pushing monoclonal antibodies. Now, monoclonal antibodies help keep you out of hospital if you don't have too many other concomitant, situations like high blood pressure and uncontrolled diabetes and those kind of things. it has proven to help keep people out of the hospital. And Rick DeSantis, the governor of Florida, actually has an investment in monoclonal antibodies. And so does this one guy that used to live in the White House, Donald Trump. And they're telling people to wait, don't take the vaccine, but get sick and take another man-made product, monoclonal antibodies, and the right-wing nut jobs, the very people who won't take the vaccine, are now saying you should take the monoclonal antibodies, which are also not natural occurring substances. They're man-made in a laboratory. Square that one with me, Val. How do you get to monoclonal antibodies and you won't take the vaccine?
Well, it's all about making money now. If they see an opportunity to make money, they'll do so. They don't adhere to reason or logic. So anything they do is understandable. I mean, it's stupid, but it's understandable why they do it. What happens to us and keeps us wringing our hands and staying up late at night, we try to square this thing because we're reasonable, logical thinking people. We try to square it and to make sense out of it. And when it doesn't make sense, we go, what is wrong with these people? Well, I think we're the ones that need to get out of our way of thinking and stop trying to reason and stop trying to be logical about it, and to just understand that, hey, these people are stupid. They're nonsensical. They don't make decisions based on reason or logic. They do it for irrational reasons, and they're going to continue to do it until we stop them. That's the key. Until we stop them and we refrain from hoping and begging them to change. Because that's our strategy right now. We try to present them with reason and fact, hoping they'll change their behavior. They're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So I wish we would stop it and get off of that train and get on the one that Lincoln was on way back when and said, you can do what you want to do, but this is what we're going to do to control you.
Right.
We're not going to ask you to change anymore. We're not going to ask you why you're doing these stupid things. We're telling you what we're going to do. And the sooner we get to that point, the sooner all of these problems will subside, guys. I'm telling you, we need to stop begging these guys to be reasonable and logical.
Well, you're absolutely right. One of the other things on COVID-19, we'll wrap this up and try to get to Haiti and a couple other things, but I want to show a video real quick. It's talking about the vaccine dose that you'll probably need to get.
Today, we are announcing our plan to stay ahead of this virus by being prepared to offer COVID-19 booster shots to fully vaccinated adults 18 years and older. They would be eligible for their booster shot 8 months after receiving their second dose of the Pfizer or Moderna mRNA vaccines. We plan to start this program the week of September 20th, 2021.
So Val, this week, it's been, CDC, the president even announced that it's clear that you'll probably need a third dose if you took either Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine, largely because this Delta variant got out there. Delta variant got out because people refused to wear masks and refused to get vaccinated in the first place. It also means that there will probably be other variants, and we may be doing this the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. I said when this started that we would probably be into a 3 or 4 year cycle on this, because if you remember Ebola, you remember Zika, where they killed very few people, it still took multiple years to beat it out of the system. This third vaccine dose, I heard one Donald Trump say that it was a money grab from Pfizer. Now, Pfizer is the one company that did not take money from the Warp Speed project. And that's the one company that the right wing is criticizing, saying that they're making up the need for the third dose. I can count, damn it. There's dead people. And I'm counting the number of dead people every day, and I'm counting the number of infected people every day. Monoclonal antibodies will not stop this because to use monoclonal antibodies, you have to have it. So that would mean that the virus continues on. Val, you're right. There's mask mandates right here in Wake County, North Carolina, where I am today, in Raleigh, but there's not one over where you are, about 10, 15 miles from me in Holly Springs. Let's wrap this up. Why are there still municipalities who will not do what they need to do in light of all the other shit we've talked about? Why won't they put the mask mandate there, but they have it over here in Raleigh?
Well, again, I think they're playing to their political constituents' head. Holly Springs, compared to Raleigh, is a little bit far right than Raleigh is. If you take a look at the town council, if you take a look at the population of Holly Springs is only about the 40,000 people. And African Americans make up about 12% of the population. That's right around what the country is, but it doesn't have the concentration that cities like Charlotte or Raleigh or Durham have when they're in the 20s, 30% of the population, which means you act differently, which means the Democratic Party has a little bit more strength than the Republican Party. Now, having said all that, to set things up, these people in the town council in Holly Springs, including the mayor, they have to do things to satisfy their constituents, which are mainly and predominantly Republican. So if you make a call or you make a decision that goes against the mainstream Republican edict or position, that could cost you during a primary election. They ain't worried about the general election. They're worried about primaries. The second meaningful job in the Holly Spring Town Council was lost in our last election. This guy was looked upon by many as being the next mayor. And he was ousted the last time. So these jobs are tenuous, and it gets back to your question, why in Raleigh, you got a mask mandate, but not in Holly Springs? Well, it goes back to politics, and it should not, because this mask mandate is a medical issue that we're dealing with, which should supersede and override the political. Again, that's where America has this problem. We've allowed the political to override everything else.
Yeah.
And that's where we get all of our stupid decisions.
Well, Val, I learned back in elementary school that if you cough on somebody and you have germs, you will make that person sick. And one way to do that is to cover that cough or sneeze. I learned that probably in the 3rd grade. So it's common knowledge, public health, but we're talking about stupidity here. Last thing on this, damn it, get vaccinated. Go to Walmart. You can walk in the door. You ain't got to make no appointment in most places. Walk in, get it, walk out. Don't wait for monoclonal antibodies. Okay, before we run out of time, Val, Haiti, massive 7.2 earthquake in Haiti. The death toll keeps rising as they keep finding people. Here's an opportunity for the United States to do something. Are they going to do something, or are we going to see people suffer even more in Haiti like they've been suffering for the last couple of decades?
Well, I think we're going to do more now than we would have had Donald Trump been reelected. I think the Biden administration is more sensitive to the needs of countries like Haiti, and try to go in and not only help out with the things that the earthquake has caused, but maybe do a little bit more than that, because they need it. Haiti is in a bad way, economically and a lot of other ways. So I am hopeful. I am confident, almost, if I can use that word, that we will do not only our share, but I think we'll go above and beyond that. I think Haiti is going to be sort of pleased at our results when it's all said and done.
Well, I can only hope so, Val, because I mean, those people have suffered tremendously. And again, it's another one of those situations where Americans don't even know the history, how we helped prop up dictators there, how we've invaded them in the past when we needed the sugar that they had. You know, I mean, it goes along with how we've treated Puerto Rico, how we treated Haiti, how we treated Cuba. Why, you know, people in our own hemisphere, we can't seem to do something about, but we keep wringing our hands about folks over in the Middle East. And we know what it's all about. That's about oil. So please read my piece this week. It says, if you read Dari, I'd like for you to translate it. And if anybody can translate it for me, I'll give you something. So anyway, Val, we're at the end of the hour. So tell me, what are you working on, or tell me something I need to look forward to the next week.
Well, I haven't done a book review in quite a while. And I have one coming up now by a young man by the name of Robert P. Jones. And I know that sounds like a typical 60s, 70s African-American name that we would give our children, but he's a Caucasian young man. And he's written a book entitled White Too Long. And it's about white Christianity and how white supremacy has been hiding behind that and the mixture. And he goes in and he unravels a lot of stuff about how Christianity has allowed white supremacy to go and thrive as long as it has. And it's a wonderful book. And I'll be talking more about that on our show, Connections, Foxy 107, 104, as it comes up. And I encourage people to tune in to Connections this week, Sunday, as a matter of fact, tomorrow morning, and listen to myself and Ed Clark, whoever he is, and Herb Jonah. We have a show coming up tomorrow morning on Foxy 107, 104 at 8 a.m.
There you go. Hey, everybody, we've squandered an hour of your time, but we appreciate you listening. Please share this with folks. We want to build the audience. We think we talk about important stuff. We put some historical context. We don't just run off at the mouth. We actually do some research too before we get on here. In the meantime, go out and do something good for somebody today, and we'll see you next Saturday. You've been watching The Deal. Thanks a lot.